I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Diane Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it?
Hi. It's good to see you.
How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you also. So what's going on in the world?
Well, the Winter Olympics just started. So we are in Milan, Italy.
Beautiful. My daughter's middle name is Milan, after Milan, Italy. When she was in my womb and I was graduating from my master's program, one of the things after I graduated I wanted to do was, before she was in my womb, the plan was after I graduated from master's program to take a family trip. I love cultural education. I love traveling. And so we were supposed to go to Italy so that I could experience Italy, love that. And then she got in my womb and I ended up not going to Italy, but I ended up naming her Italy after the fact that I was supposed to and honoring the whole process of getting through.
I love that. I didn't know her middle name was Milan.
Milan. That's her actual name.
Well, her name's is hopping right now.
Popping and hopping. One day we'll get there. We'll get
That's
there.
Awesome.
So tell me about the opening ceremonies. I always find those ceremonies really fascinating. I remember the one that was like in the UK, Italy, and they were talking about, I thought it was really fascinating. They're talking about the transition from kind of a rural farm community into the mechanical machine era and land surveying, and how, they had scenes going from this beautiful rolling plains of hills to then all of this machinery coming in, and we're losing all of our environmental factors, and they were celebrating that, and I felt like, oh, it's so horrible. And then
why were they celebrating that? Yeah.
It's horrible. And then
that would be capitalism.
That would be completely and totally the land surveying part that they actually depicted was tremendous to me, that folks would want to highlight that. But I understand people celebrate the things that they feel is their highest accomplishments. And then I also remember the opening ceremony for China, and there was a lot of use of stick figures and things like that, which for me represented the technological age, the way that we use icons and emojis in communication now. And that makes sense for Asia and the Asian continent, because we know that they're so technologically advanced compared to the rest of the globe, and the way that they're moving and engineering things. And so telling that story of community and competition, but really focusing on future proofing and what this looks like to move into a new language of technology out of China. So I'm really curious to know what the opening ceremony looked like in Italy, because I didn't get to access it here on the islands.
I didn't get to watch it. Yeah. My daughter and I watched it, and they typically, I remember the China opening ceremonies, and I remember being blown away by the amount of humans that they choreographed in such sync during the ceremony. Remember that? It was it was hundreds of people, and they were moving as one. And I remember being, thinking a lot about, gosh, how long did they practice this?
Discipline.
Yeah. That was very evident. And as a USian, I'm looking at that going, the USians could never pull that shit off,
Well, I would just push back a little bit, because Super Bowl, when their choreography of those dancers and things like that, and there's a ton of people that are on the field and they're in their rhythm and the flow, that's discipline also.
That's true.
It's entertainment discipline, which is what our GDP is, right? The US is always going to give you the middle of products and branding and that type of discipline. So the entertainment industry offers that type of discipline. But
so I remember that. I remember that about the China opening ceremonies. Yeah. So this time it's in Milan. So of course the ceremonies were focused on Italy and what Italy brings to the greater global societal lexicon. And they had representations of the bigger composers from Italy, and the dancing was interesting. They had a montage of dance that I think was supposed to depict like the decades of development for Italy. It was a little bit weird. I wasn't quite sure what that was, or maybe it was the decades of the Olympics. I think it was the decades of the Olympics. Now that I say that out loud, but I don't know. My daughter and I were both like, what are they trying to tell us here?
It's always fascinating that a story is being told of some sort.
Oh yeah. What I found fascinating was the speech of the International Olympic Committee president. I don't remember what her name is. It's a woman that heads up the IOC. And I thought she was New Zealander because I was tracking the accent, but then she said that she was from Africa. She didn't even say South Africa. She just said from where I'm from in Africa. And I'm like, okay, white presenting woman standing up there saying, and I know white people live in Africa, but it just was, it felt a little bit, I don't know. It was like, okay, colonized much, but okay. I'm
well, that's interesting because when I have met white Africans and their pride and nationalism has been, I know from somebody, U.S. cultured, it's like shocking, but it's also like lovely to see some folks that are from the continent who appreciate and are proud of being from the continent, which is not a narrative that we normally get to hold.
Right, you're right. So I'm probably I'm buying into the narrative. Yeah, when I see a white face connected to the continent, I just automatically think about colonization and extraction, and you're right. That's very short-sighted of me. So I appreciate the reminder.
No problem, because on my algorithm, there's a lot of white Africans that are just ingrained in the culture and ingrained in the community. And then I'm also on this island where, there's a diversity of ethnicities here. So it has you think about it outside of U.S. context and the level of violence and harm. We know colonization has happened, but then also like integration into culture and community looks different on different continents, where in the U.S. it doesn't allow that level of integration. And now they're actually trying to segregate us again in a like violent and harsh way. Whereas what I experience on my algorithm seeing Africa and what I experience on this island is a lovely integration of cultures and ethnicities in a healthy way.
Well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad. And I'm glad for the reminder so that I can be a little bit more mindful about that. But a lot of her speech focused on peace. And I thought that was really interesting because I was remembering as I was listening to what she was saying, I was remembering several things. I was thinking about what my own narrative about the Olympics has been in the course of my adultness, where I remember thinking about the Olympics. I used to revel in the whole, all of the world's countries coming together and competing, and we're all on the same level. And it often felt to me in the past of a kind of a level set, one of the rare times in our global society where everyone feels like they might be on a same plane or on a similar plane of competition, and everybody has worked very, very hard to get to the ability to compete on this world stage. And I found myself watching the opening ceremonies of this Olympics and not feeling the same about that. And maybe that's because I'm more aware of the global political climate. I'm aware that the IOC has been petitioned for the last 2.5 years specifically to not allow Israel to compete or to send teams to compete, and they refused to honor that. So Russia, by contrast, when Russia invaded Ukraine, they were not allowed to well, their athletes were not allowed to compete under the Russian banner. They called them the United Russian Federation of Athletes or something like that. They gave them another name, which it's still Russia. They still allowed them to compete, but they weren't
not as Russia, and it's like national
right.
power. Yeah,
right. So they've tried and failed at this bullshit before, but for this particular circumstance, since the genocide started after October 7th in 2023. Countries have been petitioning the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, to refuse to allow Israel to compete under their banner, and they ignored it. So Israel was allowed to compete. They did process in the procession of countries of athletes, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But so yeah, during her speech, she talked a lot about peace, talked a lot about creating this seeming opportunity for peace around the world. And I'm like, it just felt so flat to me, it's like you're still letting Israel compete. There are no athletes from Palestine because Israel has killed them all. So there were close to 600 athletes, professional athletes in Palestine that are no longer living because Israel has killed them in the past 2.5 years. And so her admonitions of peace fell on very deaf ears for me. And my daughter and I were having a discussion about how when the Olympics started, back when Greece held the first Olympics, it may have had that sense of the world coming together to compete against each other, but now it's just devolved into capitalism and branding and who gets the contracts and who's going to be the who gets to broadcast and all of that. So it's giving very typical obfuscation of the reality of what it is, because they want to paint this picture of world unity, which doesn't exist. And so that kind of fell flat for me.
Well, what I experienced the Olympics as was a very nationalist competition, right? To kind of show national power. And as we're shifting into like a new world order, that nationalism has very blurred lines because there is so much aggression on like different countries and communities at this point in time. And I'm thinking about like the beginning, the origins of like these competitive games and what the intention was to, I'm assuming, create relationships, because we know through music and through sports and through arts, there is an opportunity to develop relationships amongst people that might not typically have an opportunity to engage or be in any kind of community. And so some healthy competition allows for that. So I do appreciate the Olympics for that. I'm also appreciative of the Olympics for historically when there is discontent amongst people that is able to be amplified on a global stage. And I'm thinking about the 1960s when folks were raising their fists and acknowledging Black power in the United States, and that then amplifying the narrative of the harm that's going on. So one of the things that I'm going to think about, because I want to really be on solution oriented, is that being able to have this analysis of who is allowed to play and who is not allowed to play and compete in the Olympics, Israel on a national scale, how the rest of the globe responds to them processing, and how the rest of the globe, the world, responds to JD Vance and a boo, or President Trump and a boo, and all of those things, is an opportunity to amplify the conversation, the narrative, that people are displeased with the behavior that's going on, that we wouldn't be able to see on such a global scale with a targeted audience, which is a very diverse demographic of people. So I do appreciate that in the context of the Olympics. But back to this question of peace, was there a definition of peace? Because I've expanded my understanding and definition of peace to like meet the moment that we're existing in. And I'm curious if you have an expanded definition or the same definition of peace, and if the person who was making the speech defined peace.
I'm giggling because you and I have had this discussion so many times since we used to work for an organization that had peace in its name. And so we've had lots of discussions about what is the definition of peace. I don't recall her giving a definition in her speech. That doesn't mean it didn't happen, but I don't recall her giving a definition. If I'm thinking back on it based on your question, I think I'm more aware that she was speaking in the terms that most of the world tends to think about when they think about peace, the absence of conflict. And we could not possibly be further away from the absence of conflict on a global stage. And so yeah, I mean, to me, if that's her definition, you know, she didn't give one, but she kept talking about how we need to get along, we need to honor humanity, and we need to do this and we need to do that, and which is all wonderful, but it's like, okay, but you're letting Israel compete, you know. It's like you can't. I was just so aware of the narrative and the storytelling versus what they actually chose to do or not do that could have actually impacted that storytelling that she was trying to create. So yeah, it's like I call bullshit, you know, on the whole peace thing, which, you know, you and I, again, with the organization we used to work for, is, you know, that was a conversation I had many times. I call bullshit. So yeah,
I think that goes to how it goes to how you're defining it, because the way that I used to say that peace was just like the absence of being disturbed, like just leave me alone to be in my peace, right? And that makes sense, where when you leave the person alone, they can actually be in peace, right?
Whatever that looks like for them.
Whatever that looks like for them. But if you are just if you remove disturbance and leave someone alone, and still, because the environment, because the economy, because all of the things that are happening that impact people doesn't allow the person to be in peace, then that's the reason why I've kind of expanded my definition to one that meets the moment. And that would be that peace is being able to master chaos, right? And whatever that looks like for you, because chaos is existing. And if you are mastering how to get through amongst the chaos, then you have the opportunity to try to achieve some peace, because you've mastered that things are not going the way that you would need them to go, and trying to get some balance into making them get to that way. So that's what my expanded, but I see your wheels turning as you're thinking about this. So I love to hear.
Well, yeah, what comes up for me, and we have these discussions when we work for that organization, what comes up for me is the difference between what I heard you just describe is about personal decision-making about what peace looks like, and creating that, mastering that chaos, because the chaos around you conceivably is being created by someone else, someone outside of yourself. And so how do you master that chaos?
You could put yourself into chaos too. You could create these
environments. But the only thing, you know, if I believe that I only have control over myself.
Yes.
And I can only affect change within myself. Mastering chaos, yes, the chaos can be within myself, and so it falls to me to master that. But when she was talking about creating peace, it was a very outward facing, like, I know I'm not being very articulate, creating peace for somebody else. I remember you and I talked a lot about this when we worked for the org. Is it about creating peace for somebody else? Is it about leaving people alone and letting them create their own peace? And what does that look like? Not letting them, but you know what I mean, leaving them alone so that their peace is of their own making. I heard her mostly talking in terms of we need to create peace for it's the outward facing peace. It's like not focusing on the peace that you have the most control over, which is what's going on within you and your immediate world. It was all about creating peace for other people. And to me, I think that's the biggest issue with the conversation about peace, because
You can't do
You know,
that.
we've talked about white saviorism. We've talked about, you know, people coming in and wanting to fix things for other people. I've been guilty of that and probably will continue to work on that the rest of my life.
Me too, always.
And then, you know, and the fault that lies with that action, even though it sounds well-meaning, it sounds, you know, on the surface, it sounds like it would be a thing to do, and yet it's routinely not the thing to do and can be just as harmful as creating the chaos. And so you saw my wheels turning. That's what was coming up for me.
No, I understand that. And having, I said and having the understanding that creating, if you are in the idealism of creating peace for someone else rather than creating peace with someone else, that effort and that work is you working on peace.
Right.
For you, like, you can create peace for others per se if you worried about you and not worried about others. About, and not in a, you know, individualistic kind of way, but in a, what I can control, I know I cannot do this thing that's going to cause harm to someone else. I know that I can offer this mutual aid that's going to support somebody else in their struggle. Those are the ways that you can, one, master chaos to achieve peace, but then also create peace for others because you are working on the thing that you have control over.
Yeah, it starts here, right? So
in the in group, and then we move to the layers of our social constructs to the outer groups. But if you haven't mastered the chaos with yourself, then it's hard to turn to your family. Then it's even harder to turn to community, and then definitely to the larger society, and then to the globe. We're not going to be doing that. We're just not. But if we're
moving, and so relating that to the Olympics and relating that to the International Olympic Committee, you know, she's up there as the president talking about peace, 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 but she didn't do the thing that she could have done. The IOC didn't do the thing that they could have done, which was put a flag in the sand and say, we are not going to platform teams from a country that has been committing a genocide on live stream for 2.5 years. And they didn't do that. They didn't do the thing that they could have done that was within their power to do to try to impact the chaos or the peace that might be surrounding the Olympics. They didn't do the one thing they had control over doing. And so, you know, they failed in that whole, so they could talk a good game. The narrative about peace is always lovely to hear and always, you know, makes your heart feel whatever and the warm and fuzzies in your belly. But if the person that's talking about it isn't doing the thing that they actually have control over doing to impact that, then it's a moot point.
And unfortunate that folks from Palestine and Palestinians aren't able to be representative there because the loss of life.
Yeah,
you know, and that also is a narrative storytelling that we don't want to forget, that we don't want to, you know, want to devalue or discredit. We want to recognize.
I mean, imagine
kind of convention to like work it out on the field. You know what I mean? Build some team, have some healthy competition. But what I love about the Olympics is that even in the competition, you are acknowledging the greatness of the other folks that you're in competition with. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's rare that you see bad blood happening during the Olympics. You just are really being able to honor and recognize skills. And the level of skill is so high. And we get to see that across the different countries, how high the level of skill is for the same things, so that we can develop a relative respect for that group of people. And that's what I do love seeing Olympic Games for, that component of it, besides just seeing high skilled humans doing their craft, which is fantastic.
Well, imagine what that could have looked like. Let's play the what if game, right? Okay, so 2 years ago during the Summer Olympics, Palestine did have still athletes that could compete. And there were Palestinian, I know for sure there were track and field athletes that competed, and there may have been other teams as well, but that's what's coming to mind first. imagine what this opening ceremonies could have been if they carved out just a small, I mean, when the team from Ukraine came into the stadium, the cheers were huge.
I love hearing that.
I call them talkies, the commentators for NBC that were talking about all the different teams as they come in. They were talking about Ukraine and, oh, isn't it wonderful that Ukraine still is sending, in the face of all the things that they're imagine what could have happened if they had made an intentional choice, first of all, to not allow Israel to compete. Second of all, to carve out a space to remember the Palestinian athletes that no longer live and cannot compete because they are no longer alive.
Yeah.
What on this world stage, right? I mean, I don't even know how many countries this is aired in, how many millions, hundreds of millions, trillions of people are watching these opening ceremonies. That was a choice. That could have been a choice that they made. It was a choice not to do it. And, if we really are about peace and we really are going to use the platform that we have at our disposal to highlight the fact that last time there was an Olympics, there was a Palestinian team, and now there is no longer one.
To even say it, yeah, or at least don the flag, let community country representatives walk the walk.
Yeah. That would have been enormous, and so I guess I want to challenge people, anybody that watched the ceremonies and found themselves sliding into that sense of warm and fuzzy, we love the Olympics and we love the peace talk and we love all of that. I want to challenge you, even if it's in hindsight, to think about what choices the IOC and the people that put the opening ceremonies together, what choices did they make? And they did make choices. It's not that nobody thought about it. It's not that, they made choices to not only allow Israel to compete, but to not allow Palestine to be represented in whatever way, shape, or form they could be. So
I'm hearing that the IOC made choices, and so did the U.S. The U.S. made some choices that you were telling me about as far as how the U.S. is going to show up at the Olympics, and that's bringing in ice. Mm-hmm.
Well, they did. They reportedly there have been lots of protests outside of the Olympic Village and around it because the U.S. I guess each country is responsible for bringing any extra security that they may want to have, and the U.S. decided to bring ICE agents from the U.S. to the Olympic Village in Milan to create security, which is not surprising given that ICE has been trained by the IOF. And so, but there have been, the protests have just exploded around Milan because of that. Because they are essentially, the protesters are saying to Italy, you have allowed murderers to come into our country, without consequence. And so there's been a lot of frustration around that. When the U.S. when the team came into the Olympic arena during the procession of states or of countries, their teams, one thing they did well is that the first, from what I'm reading, the first ever Black woman athlete was the flag bearer for the U.S. But she's voted on that the flag bearer, the flag holder, yay, the flag holder is voted on by the team, by the U.S. team collective. They vote.
Go, sis.
And so yay for I'm blanking on her name, so I don't want to say the wrong name out loud. But so that was a good thing. They did get booed. The U.S. team got booed by the people in the main stadium.
The whole entire U.S. team. So as they was walking through procession, U.S. came up, the red, white, and blue, and that was the first time that you heard boo, boo, boo.
And they got
that
booed.
is really talking about how people are thinking about the country.
Yes,
for real.
Yes. And then when they showed JD Vance, who is our vice president, for those that are not in the U.S., JD Vance and his wife Usha were in the stadium, in the main stadium, because the teams walked in 4 different locations because they're spread out all around, the area for the different. I guess they took into consideration, which I appreciate, because some of the locations for the sports are so far away from Milan, where the main stadium is, that they knew it would be too hard on the athletes, especially the ones that had to compete the next day, because the opening ceremonies go so long. They knew it would be too hard for them to be in the main stadium and then have to travel to where their sport was going to compete the next day. So they had 4 different locations for team members to march in. So you saw 4 different versions of the, because they were spread out, which I thought was a good choice for supporting the athletes, especially. But so JD Vance and his wife Usha were in the main stadium, and when they showed them on the screen, when the U.S. team was coming into the main stadium being booed, the boos got even louder with Vance and Usha on the screen.
So embarrassing.
But true to NBC form, they dampened the sound, the exterior sound, so you couldn't really hear it clearly. I heard it better on like YouTube clips from people that were in the stadium or things that were broadcasts that were.
They're never going to let it be known
on
a mainstream platform, but when you go to the truth, they can't hold it.
So that happened. And then of course, when Israel came in, they were booed. And again, they didn't let you really hear it full throttle. And you have to listen to it on different platforms, not NBC, to be able to hear the boos.
Well, I'm happy to hear that the global community is not happy with the way that both the United States and Israel are being actors on a global scale, and that it's being amplified through these games again, which is why I think that the platform at the Olympics is really good for helping to talk about what our global relationships look like.
And one more narrative about resistance. The Israeli bobsledding team had not gotten to Milan yet.
Why are you talking about bobsledding? Why are you talking about bobsledding to a Jamaican?
It was the Israeli team. They had not gotten
Jamaican bobsled and the whole.
I know. I remember seeing them. Snoop Dogg was hanging out with them.
Cool runnings.
They had not gotten to Milan yet. I don't know exactly where they were. I don't know if they were still in Israel or if they were somewhere else, but their hotel rooms got broken into, and all of their passports got stolen. So the Israeli bobsledding team has not been able to travel to Milan because they don't have their passports anymore. So I just wanted to end on the movie about resistance. and I can neither. I'm just going to say kudos to whoever pulled that one off.
It won't be called Cool Runnings. It'll be called something else. But that's when that movie comes out. But
yeah. So I
also wanted to bring up something that was important, though. Thank you for that, like little aside about the bobsledding team. For people who don't understand that, the reason why we keep on bringing up ICE is a completely brand new enforcement under our law enforcement in the United States. This is something that is newly created to completely target immigrants. It's the Immigrant and Customs Enforcement. So the fact that they are deploying ICE agents to be protectors of U.S. citizens outside in the globe, these are not people that have international law relations training. These are not people that have a long history of training or experience in any type of enforcement of any laws in the U.S. or anything like that. So to hear that these are the folks that are being used and deployed in these global ways, it is concerning for folks that understand how U.S. enforcement typically is done.
Yeah, ICE was developed after 2001. So it was in response to 9/11 when Islamophobia and really exploded
xenophobia.
after 9/11. Yeah. So yeah, it's a very interesting choice, and and likely it's because they just have so many of them. I mean, the ICE numbers have exploded in their
yes.
in their budget as well as their numbers, and so
and the utilization of the enforcement. That's what I'm talking
Right,
about. That's a
right,
very
right.
new thing to have, like ICE agents deployed on the streets, just walking on, being sent out of the country. That's like completely. It's the immigration and customs enforcement. Their role is not to be escorting U.S. citizens
Right.
outside and playing security. That's just
No.
not what their role is or has been, but is being utilized in a way that's unconstitutional, actually.
So kudos to Milan and to the resistance fighters in Milan who are protesting the presence of ICE in the Olympic Village and in the surrounding areas, because that's how we can make our voices heard, is by raising a ruckus, creating the chaos
on a global scale, and then mastering it to achieve our peace. I love it.
Yes, absolutely.
Why do I give a fuck?
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, as you move throughout your day, continue to ask yourself,
Why do I give a fuck?
Why Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Diane. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.